Hello and welcome to another booktube video from me, Lauren from Lauren in the Books. Today I am bringing you my February wrap up. That is all the February. It was my February wrap up. That is all the books that I read in February. I read 10 books in February, which I'm really pleased with. I am aiming to read 110 books this year, so 10 books a month. That is very much on target, so I'm very pleased with that. Now, I started the month with a book I don't have, as I had to return it to the library, and that book was called Hark a Vagrant by Kate Beaton. I don't know if I'd describe this as a graphic novel because it's not, but it's in the sort of style as a graphic novel. Now this I gave, and I never give point stars, but I've done 2 this month. This I gave 2.5 stars, so I really thought that I was going to really love this, and I didn't. I liked it, which is fine, and you're allowed to like things, but I found that some of the comic strips were very giggle worthy. I really enjoyed it. In particular, I enjoyed the Nancy Drew ones where they have a cover of a Nancy Drew book and then the title on there, and just based on that cover she does the sort of plot in the in a comic strip, which is very funny. I also like the Javert bit from Les Miserables, the Dickens, the Austen and the Bronte bits, but a lot of it was Canadian and American history, which I have nothing to do. I have no idea about. I'm not even that good at English history. I stopped doing history at the age of 14 because I didn't take it as a GCSE option, so very sparse in the old knowledge there. So that lacked a bit with me, but I would probably give, she's done another one called Step Aside Pops, and I really enjoy the writing, and the bits that I did understand I found really funny, so 2.5 stars. I liked it. I would give Step Aside Pops a go. Now the second book I read, oh my god, I've gone on about this quite a lot, was Confess by Colleen Hoover. This I read for a book club book with my work book club, so it got put in the pot because it won last year on Goodreads Best Romance Novel of 2015. Now, I do not like romance. This was never going to be my book. But I put romance, I put all sorts of different genres in the pot because there's some people who really love romance. And for instance, in book club, there was somebody who loved this so much who, since having read this, had gone on and read 3 other books by Colleen Hoover in time for book club because she just loved it so much. But this is not my type. I do not enjoy reading romance, and I hated it. I hated the characters. I thought Auburn, the main girl character in it, she was a complete spineless drip, and Owen, the sort of like hunky artist man in it, he just had absolutely nothing to him. There was nothing apart from the fact that he looked nice with his shirt off, and he just had nothing to him. The sex scenes in this were some of the cringiest things I've ever read in my whole life. I was reading it on my lunch at work and I was like, ugh! Ugh! It was just awful, and I hated it. And if I hadn't have read this for book club, there is no way I would have finished it, and I just thought it was absolute shite. Absolute shite. So hated that. 1 star. Well done. The next book I read was 2 More Pints by Roddy Doyle. So I have read 2 Pints by Roddy Doyle, which is it's a selection of conversations between 2 Irish men sat in a pub in Dublin. Very sort of topical things that have been going on in the year. This year spans 2012 to 2014, so 2 years actually. So there's things in here like Kate Middleton, Barack and Michelle Obama, David Beckham, Jimmy Savile, etc, etc. I was looking forward to this as when I read 2 Pints, I really enjoyed it, and when I didn't even realise 2 More Pints was out, and I got it out from the library, and it was okay. I like the way it's written, and the scriptness of the conversations really makes for very fast reading. I read it in a day, but I just didn't like it as much as 2 Pints. I found there was a lot about football in here, and I really want to read more Roddy Doyle. I want to read some of his novels and things like that to see how I get on with it. But this just wasn't for me, and I gave it 2 stars because although there was parts in it I did like, I found it disappointing compared to the first one. The next book I listened to on audiobook, although I do have a hard copy of it here, is Grandpa's Great Escape by David Walliams. So I was doing my radio book club, which I do on BRFM on sort of middle Monday of the month. We were talking about children's books, and I've read a few David Walliams ones. This was the new one out, and I thought we would give it a go. And on top of that, I thought I would read it, listen to it as an audiobook, just to see what it's like. David Walliams narrates the audiobook, and he makes a really good job of it. His voices that he does for this are brilliant, and I really enjoyed it. It's about a young boy called Jack, whose grandpa is sort of getting older and a bit more forgetful, and he runs away from home a few times. He runs away from his own contained flat, and then he runs runs away from his mum and dad's house when he comes to stay with them, and he sort of keeps having like flashbacks of World War II and him and his Spitfire, etc. And he ends up going to stay in the dastardly Twilight Towers, which is a sort of like very questionable old people's homes. This was really cute. It was really fun, and I can see why kids love it. It really reminds me of Roald Dahl. I've read other things by him, Gangster Granny and Billionaire Boy, and it's sort of like dastardly plan, good character overcomes the bad character, and I can see, and it made me feel the way that Roald Dahl books used to make me feel when I was younger, so I really thought it was cute. David Walliams, as I said, did a great job with the voices on the audiobook, and Michael Gambon, Dumbledore, voices Grandpa, and he did a really great job too. It's very bittersweet, and there's sweet and happy moments, and like sad and happy moments, and there's parts of it where I did feel very sad, but in terms of the actual book, the illustrations are great. They remind me of Quentin Blake. It's not Quentin Blake. It doesn't say who it is on here, but normally it does, doesn't it? It does not. It does not say. But yeah, it reminded me of Quentin Blake, and the way that some of the words, it just must be an absolute joy for a child to read, like, and I can see why kids love them so much. So I gave that 3 stars, and I'll always try and keep up with what David Walliams has got coming out, because I just think it was great. The fifth book I read this month is a buddy read I did with the lovely Katie from Books and Things, whose channel I will link down below. She is a wonderful booktuber. She's got, what she doesn't know about Austen and Dickens is just not even worth knowing them. And she's just so cute and lovely, and I love her channel so much, so definitely go and check her out. But we did a buddy read of Not the End of the World by Kate Atkinson. This is a selection of Kate Atkinson's short stories, and they sort of sit around, the first story is about two girls that are going shopping during a sort of like apocalypse, like the world is coming to an end. And then the end story, oh God, I don't know if this is a spoiler. Careful. The end story is them, and all the stories that have been happening in between are stories they've been telling each other. And I found that really nice. As I said, I buddy read this with Katie, and as there's 12 short stories in here, we read a short story a day, and it was so lovely to be able to read a short story a day for 12 days. I loved some of these stories. Some I would have loved more of, like I could have easily read an entire novel of evil doppelgangers, which was probably my favourite one in there. And some were really sad, and some were super weird, like a woman who took a stray cat in, and then like he gradually gets more and more like at home, and then she ends up having it off with him and getting pregnant with his little cat baby. So that was weird. As I said, it starts with a story about Charlene and Trudy and the end of the world, and ends with them, and I love the interconnectedness that some of the characters know each other and things like that. I absolutely love this, and I love Kate Atkinson. I gave this 4 stars and really, really enjoyed it. The next book I read was my book that I pulled out of my TBR jar at the beginning of the month, which was A Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. Take notice to see how bloody big this is. Absolutely massive. I enjoyed this much more than I thought I would. Don't get me wrong, it was over 800 pages, and it was a bloody hard slog in times. And sometimes I didn't know who the character, what was going on. I find there's a lot of characters like Tywin and Tyrion and Rob and Robard and Robert, and yeah, it's just like there's a lot of same name characters. And to help myself along, I started watching the first series, which I'd only watched 6 episodes of. I actually have stopped watching that, but I must pick it up again, and that really helped because it made me be able to put a face to some of the characters. I was really interested in the plot and invested in all the characters, and I love the multiple perspectives. I really, really enjoy multiple perspectives in a book, so I love to know what was going on. And I particularly liked Arya, Daenerys, whose name I'm sure I'm not saying right, and Tyrion's chapters. Tyrion, who is the imp, so he is the dwarf brother of Caitlyn. No shit. Oh my God, what's that horrible woman's name? He's a dwarf man, and he's really fun, and I really enjoyed his character. I'm going to continue with the TV series and potentially carry on with the books, but yeah, I found this enjoyable, and I gave it 3 stars. The next book I read was Fishnet by Kirstin Innes, and this was one of the 2 of my favourite books that I read this month. I absolutely thought this was incredible. I gave it 4.5 stars, and here is why. So this follows, so when I came to this book, I wasn't expecting it to be what it was. So I'd heard that it was about a sister who, I heard it was about a woman whose sister had gone missing a few years back, and she was sort of looking back into it, perhaps because fresh evidence had come out or something, but she was looking back into it, and she discovered that her sister worked as a sex worker. So when I came to that, I thought it was going to be a bit murder mystery-ish, like a sort of whodunit, but it was much, much more than that. So this was really informative, sensible, and truly educational about a subject I literally had next to no knowledge about, which is the sex industry. The way it's written really, really engagingly, and it is such a compelling read. So Rona is the sister that's gone missing, and Fiona is the other sister. Rona and Fiona, love that they match. It's told a little bit from Rona at the beginning, a little bit from Rona at the end, and from Fiona throughout. Now Fiona really does her research into the sex industry, and tries to find out people that her sister may have worked with, or find out if she can like think in the way that her sister did. And she starts following sort of like blog posts from people who work in the sex industry, who are earning an awful lot of money, who pay their taxes, who are earning an honest day's work. And really looks into it. So as I said, it was really, really explanatory and eye-opening really onto how much women and men can be shrewd business owners as a sex worker, and it didn't like hide away from some of the bad points in the sex industry, and I just found it really, really interesting. And as I said, it was just written in a way that I really just wanted to keep reading. I absolutely just flew through this because it was so enjoyable, and I would definitely recommend it to anyone. Another thing I really liked about it was that it's set in Scotland, and the speech is so lyrical and beautiful. The dialect is written out brilliantly. And I just found it really, really enlightening. It answered questions about the sex industry that I didn't even know I had, and was just a sort of like, that this author has clearly done her research and hasn't just sort of like just taken what everyone thinks the sex industry is about and just regurgitated it. She's really looked into it, and she sort of covered all sorts of thoughts, like all sorts of people in society and what they think of sex workers, but without like ramming it down your throat. And I was just so super impressed with this, and I would really, really urge you to read it. Now, I gave it 4.5 stars, and the only reason I didn't give it 5 stars is because there's just a small thing in here that I just don't, it wasn't that it didn't sit well with me, I didn't find that part believable. So the part that I didn't find believable is that Fiona and Rona's mother just sort of accepted the fact that her daughter worked as a sex worker, and over an email just sort of like brushes like aside any sort of questions that I think a mother would have as the mother of a sex worker. So that was something I thought that could have maybe been explored a little bit more in here. But apart from that, I absolutely really, really love this. 4.5 stars, and I would urge people to go and read it because it is just really, really good read. This is definitely, when I discover books that I know are going to be in my top 10 of the year, I mean, unless I read another 10 books better than this, I'm always so excited because I'm like, that's going in my top 10 books of the year. Spoiler alert. The next book I read was A Wild Swan and Other Tales. A Wild Swan and Other Tales by Michael Cunningham, which is a series of fairy tales told in the modern day. So I started this book and was pleasantly surprised. So obviously this is gorgeous, and the illustrations inside are absolutely beautiful. Let me find some. That's not one of the most beautiful ones. I want to impress you. I want to really impress you. Now I can't find any. Here's 2 naked people stood by the fire. That should keep you going. And it's absolutely beautiful. So it's like, this is the front and back, and then you can't see, but it's got an embossed swan. It is beautiful, and it would make for an incredible gift for somebody who loves fairy tales or somebody who loves short stories. They would absolutely love it. So I much preferred the first half of the book and the short stories. In particular, I love Jacked, which was a retelling of Jack and the Beanstalk, and in fact I love the alternative and perspectives in motives in most of the stories. I feel like it's sort of like tailed off a bit towards the end. So loved the first half, gave it 3 stars, enjoyed it. The next book I read, me and David read to one another because we are cool and that's what we do, and that was The Fox and the Star by Coralie Bickford Smith. David bought this for me for either Valentine's Day or anniversary, I can't remember because they are a mere 1 day apart, and this is just beautiful. It won Waterstone's Book of the Year last year. It's a children's book, and it is just honestly the most beautiful thing you have ever seen in your life. David and I read it to one another. Here is what the inside looks like. I don't want to ruin it for you because I think everyone should go out and buy it. Look, I mean, look at it. Look at those stars. And I actually cried tears of joy when reading this. So imagine that, real life tears. It's beautiful and delightful. I love the illustrations, the colours palette. The story was gorgeous. It made me cry. It's just perfection. I gave it 5 stars and it's just gorgeous. I think for adults and children alike, it is just beautiful. It's just a beautiful, beautifully produced book, published book. Beautiful story, beautiful illustrations. Beautiful, 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 beautiful. The last book I read this month is Now You See Me by Emma Horton. This was a book that I read on my Kindle for book club, and I didn't realise this book was YA when I started. So as I was reading it, I was thinking, Jesus Christ, this storyline is pretty simple and very predictable. I thought all the characters' motives in this book were really weak and unnecessary, basically. So it follows the story of a girl, Hannah, whose best friend went missing just off the face of the earth when she was 13, and she's 16 now, and he's sort of turned back up. Somebody found him in France. And she's not sure about him, and she thinks, oh, I'm not sure this is him. It looks like him, but is it him? It turns out not to be him. But I thought all the characters were really annoying and unlikable. Hannah was basically a doormat. She did so much babysitting for Danny, that's the guy who went missing, Danny's parents. She may as well just moved in there. And I thought it was boring, predictable and lifeless. I really didn't, it just didn't do it for me, and I gave it 1 star, and I just thought it was cack. Can I say cack? I said cack. There are 2 things that I read this month that I didn't finish. Now look at me. A month ago I was doing a video saying I always finish books, and now I've DNA'd 1 book. I just feel like I can DNA. That's something from work. DNF'd 1 book. I feel like I can just DNF all books. It wasn't like that, it wasn't like that. So, I started reading Storm in a Teacup by Caroline Flack because I quite like her hair, and I also really enjoyed her time on Strictly. I read the first chapter, well actually I got to page 42, and I was like, hey, do I really want to read this whole thing? Because this is basically just an advert for how cool and hard, but what a cool boss Simon Cowell is. And I thought, I'm not going to do this anymore, so I flicked to the chapter about Strictly, read the chapter about Strictly, thoroughly enjoyed the chapter about Strictly, and thought, hey, I'm not going to read that anymore. So once I've done that, didn't bother reading it anymore. Well done me. And also, Red Rising is a book that I started. David's home. Hello, dear.
Yo.
Is a book that I read for my online book club. So I read the bump for this and was like, this is going to be something that I'm really, really into. And read it and then just never really got that into it. And I got something like 100 and something pages in and was just like, do you know what? I'm not loving this. And I think it might be one that I come back to because I love the idea that everybody, like this whole world, in that everybody is a colour and they've all got certain jobs or they've all got sort of things that speaks to my OCD nature. But I just didn't love it. I was disappointed. But there's a few people who I love dearly who really enjoyed this book. So I feel like maybe I will come back to it at some point. Maybe it wasn't the right time for me. So that is the 10 books that I have read this month. What did everybody read in February? What are people reading in March? Have you read any of these books and did you enjoy them? Should I go back to Red Rising? What do you think? If I go back to Red Rising, I will start from the beginning and I'll really maybe I'll do it when I'm on holiday or something so I can commit. I would love to hear from you all in the comments, and I will see you all again soon with another BookTube video. Goodbye!